Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
We have been sold a lie, especially for women. Multitasking makes me more productive. That's just not true because the human brain cannot multitask. What ends up happening is we're switching between tasks so fast that we think we're in parallel process, but we're not. And it really causes you burnout. You become very frazzled, overwhelmed, dysregulated, and it's because we have been sold the lie that we can be multitasking.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by the lovely Brie Tucker.
Why? Hello, everybody. How are you?
We have such a good podcast episode for you today. As I was reading this woman's book, Toxic Productivity, I was like, it's me. And I am so excited to begin this conversation because I have a feeling you out there in podcast land will find a lot of similarities to yourself as well.
I can't help but have gone straight to the, it's me. Hi. I have a problem. It's me. I'm like, yeah. And it's funny you were saying about the whole toxic productivity because I totally believe that that is a huge thing that is just not spoken about. But telling our audience, I kept unconsciously changing the title of today's episode from toxic productivity to toxic positivity. In my opinion, another thing we do not talk enough about, which I think is almost kind of in that same boat. Like, don't you think? Like the two of them are so closely aligned. It's crazy.
They are. And all I can think of with toxic is a Britney Spears song comes in my head, the toxic song, but I won't mention it because I don't get there. I knew as soon as I said it, I knew that was going to be the end. Okay.
You're like anything to make Brie not sing for 5 seconds. There we go.
We are going to introduce our guest. Israa Nasir is a New York City-based psychotherapist, writer, and the founder of WellGuide, a digital community for mental health awareness. A Pakistani-Canadian child of immigrants, she has a specific focus on mental health, identity formation, and healing for the AAPI first and second generation immigrant community. Israa has been featured in NBC, Vox, HuffPost, and Teen Vogue. And we know that you are going to love our conversation with her. So let's get on with the show. You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Israa. I'm so excited to dig into this subject of toxic productivity because I feel it out there, but you have just given it such an amazing name it to tame it name. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I love the energy on this podcast. So I'm very excited to dive into this. I always have mixed feelings when people say they're related to the book because part of me is like, yay, what I wrote is relevant. And the other part of me is like, oh no, what I wrote is relevant. And so I'm happy to chat about this.
It's one of those things where you're like, yay, we relate. Oh crap, we're all suffering.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true. Mm-hmm. I remember 2 or 3 years ago when we were getting ready to move and find a new house, like me and my family were moving closer to where my daughter went to high school. And we were touring like these houses. And I would go into these kids' rooms and I would see all these signs on the walls. That's like hustle first or like no pain, no gain. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. So Israa, can you tell us like what is toxic productivity?
Toxic productivity happens when our relationship to the things that we do crosses over like a threshold of being beneficial and helpful, not just in the long term, but also not just in the short term, but also in the long term. And it moves from that place into being helpful in the short term and over time becomes very harmful. And so that's like a very convoluted, long way of saying that what we do becomes very central to our identity. And so therefore, everything we do becomes equally important. And when normal, natural things like failure and mistakes happen, we take it personally to our being, and our productivity becomes a priority in our life over our wellness, our health, our relationships. Everything becomes secondary. And we start to measure how good we feel about ourselves with the things that we do. So it's really just like a very unhealthy relationship to outcomes and achievements.
So I have to say right there, does anybody else feel like that you just described our childhood? Like, I feel like that's what it was growing up in our generation. We were told you can do anything as long as you hustle and work hard for it. You know, as long as you do your best all the time, and you should come home with like straight A's. I feel like that was like a huge message from like the boomer generation onto their kids.
Well,
and
also, like, I feel that message is still perpetuated because a lot of times we hear from parents about wanting their kids to try their best at school. And what they mean by this is the child will come home and is doing really well in one subject, but maybe they're doing like a C in another subject. And they're like, we just want to make sure you're doing the best you can and you're trying your best. And what you said right there, Israa, is giving equal weight to all the different things in our lives just isn't possible, especially the message we give our kids, the things we do ourselves, like all of the things on our to-do list. What do you feel right now, Israa, are some of the mistakes and the common myths that people have about productivity that's making it toxic?
I just want to reference a point you made earlier, Brie. For sure, like post-boomer, Gen X, millennial, even Gen Z to some degree in their own way, we were definitely raised in this myth of meritocracy, and that taps into toxic productivity really, really well. And, millennials are now parents. They are leaders in companies. They're managers. They're decision makers. And so you're seeing this mass burnout across the board, because we do believe that if you work hard, you're going to do well, guaranteed. But that's just absolutely not. It was true for the boomers, perhaps, but it's not true in the world right now at all. Some of the common productivity myths that keep us trapped in this mindset, one is very, very prominent, especially for women. And that one is multitasking makes me more productive. If you are a parent, if you are sandwich generation, so you're caring for elderly as well as your own kids, you might even pride yourself in being a multitasker. And people often say, oh, women are naturally good at multitasking. That's just not true, because the human brain cannot multitask, period. It's just not a thing that we can do. What ends up happening is we're switching between tasks so fast that we think we're in parallel process, but we're not. And it really, really causes you cognitive burnout. You become very frazzled, you become very overwhelmed, you become very dysregulated. And that's where you see all of these, mom memes around mental load and just being super frazzled.
Yep.
And I think it's because we have been sold the lie that we can be multitasking. So that's one really big one. Another is that, the way I am productive is exactly how you're going to be productive, Brie, and you're going to be Joanne. We're all these three completely distinct women with different biologies, different backgrounds, different racial backgrounds as well, different lifestyles, right? All of us have different lifestyles, but we're all going to be productive the same way. That means we're all going to wake up at the same time, and we're all going to do the same wellness things, and your workouts are going to work for me and my workouts are going to work for you. That's just a myth, right? The 5 a.m. club. Yeah. The 5 a.m. club is a lie.
Oh God, I hate the 5 a.m. club.
Yeah, it does work for some people, and we need to respect that, but it is not for everybody. And I hate this idea that
but not for me.
It's not for me either. I definitely had to, and I would recommend this to everybody, just pay a little bit of attention to your body's natural rhythms. And you'll notice the times that you are your best. And you might be really creative and problem solving in the morning. Do all of that work in the morning. Don't do emails first thing. But if you're more creative and problem solving in the afternoon, do your emails first, because they don't require a lot of creative thinking, right?
Yeah, 2 to 4 is my sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Same actually. I think there's one more that I definitely want to talk about, which is busy means productive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does not, right?
It does not.
You can fill up your calendar. You can do a million things. Mm-mm.
There's so much busyness in the world too. Going back to your first myth, because you mentioned the mental load and this lie that we've all been told about multitasking. And I have actually a question for you that I feel like will open up a bit of a can of worms with our audience.
Ooh.
Because a lot of social media is talking right now about mom's mental load and how more people need to come in and help mom with this stuff. But I also think that we as women have control over our mental load. And I don't think that that is talked about enough, that control we might have, this whole abandoning of this myth that we can be multitasking and changes that we can make within ourselves that don't require any extra effort from the people around us, but rather something internally. And I want to hear your thoughts on that right after this.
Did you know that Americans take about 20,000 breaths a day and spend an average of 90% of their time indoors? And the indoor air quality that we breathe can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air, according to the EPA. Indoor air pollutants can cause respiratory symptoms like sneezing, congestion, scratchy throat, and even more serious health problems like lung and heart disease. So what's the solution? Introducing Air Doctor, the air purifier that filters out 99.99% of dangerous contaminants so your lungs don't have to. This includes allergens, pollen, pet dander, dust mites, mold spores, and even bacteria and viruses. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't love it, you just send it back for a refund minus the shipping. So head to airdoctorpro.com and use the promo code NGM, and you'll receive up to $300 off air purifiers. And exclusive to podcast customers, you will also receive a free 3-year warranty on any unit, which is an additional $84 value. Lock in the special offer by going to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code NGM. The holiday season is here, and Jenny Kane is our go-to destination. They have everything you need, from luxurious clothing and shoes to candles and home decor and so much more. Check out their iconic gift guide if you're looking to effortlessly check everyone off your list. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order. Go to jennykane.com and use the code GUILT15 to get 15% off. Now, Joanne and I have our favorite pieces. Hers is the crop cashmere cocoon cardigan in ivory, and I have to say it looks stunning on her, and she has said it is so cozy. Mine is the alpaca cocoon crew net in their seasonal design, ivory with pinstripes. I love how I can wear it with leggings just to veg out at home, or pair it with some cute boots and jeans for an evening out. It's amazing. So gift yourself and your loved ones the best gift of all, Jenny Kane. Our listeners get 15% off your first order when you use the code GUILT15 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order at JENNIKAYNE.com. Promo code GUILT15. Let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
So talking about this mental load, Israa, do you think that it is possible for people to have control over their own mental load, to be able to affect it in some aspect versus having to like push this onto our partners or our husbands to relieve the mental load from us?
Absolutely. So I think almost every circumstance has a level of accountability, barring like extenuating, tragic, abusive trauma circumstances. Outside of that, we have agency and accountability in almost every situation that we are in. And so when it comes to the mental load, one of the things I really like to talk about, and this is not just relevant if you're a mom, I think this falls on the unfortunate like gender binary, where people will say things like, well, women are just good at doing this and women are just good at doing that. One of the things that keeps us trapped in a mental load scenario is thinking that we are the only ones who know how to do it the right way. And believing that there is a right way for everything. That can look like very trivial things like loading the dishwasher, how the cushions need to be, and like jumping off on some memes from the internet, number of pillows on your bed. So there's this idea that there's a right way to do these things. that right way is my way to do this, and it must be done to perfection. So when we think about, oh, like there's only one way to do things, the underlying emotional mechanism is perfectionism.
Yeah.
Right. And we need to relinquish control over that perfectionism. And so if your male family member is loading the dishwasher in a way that is just making your insides fall apart,
right?
You need to learn how to manage that.
Okay, that's a bit of a mic drop moment. I think every single one of us can relate to that time where we are standing there and we are watching a member of our family do something and it is killing us. We're like, I mean, and then we just like either take it over or I don't know. Matter of fact, like this exactly happened to me last night with my daughter. And I kept interfering with something she was trying to handle. And God bless her, she was trying to be an adult and handle talking to somebody with their order. And she was having a problem with the way they were taking her order. And I kept butting in. Finally, she turns around. She's like, Mom, stop it. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, oh my God, she was doing it fine. I mean, it wasn't my way and it really wasn't the best way, but she at least was getting there. And why didn't I just shut up? Like sometimes we just can't help ourselves from popping in there.
Well, I think that Israa, like you make a great point. It is your emotional, you say in your book that your inner critical advice was the voice of your emotional foundation. And one of the things that you said, Israa, was perfectionism. Yeah. Is there anything else that might be contributing to this idea that only we know how to do the things we do? Or tell us more about perfectionism too.
Gosh, yeah. I think that, a lot of times, if you are like raised in a very overachieving environment, you naturally start to overfunction because you believe that your value in your family unit or your workplace or your relational unit is dependent on how much you can produce. How good of a parent, how good of a worker, friend, sister, whatever can you be? That determines how much you take on.
Yes.
And so when we overfunction, that also creates this idea that other people are not good enough. Like only I know how to do this because I've been doing it for so long. Like it's just easier. How many times have we heard, oh, it's easier for me to just do it instead of explaining it?
That's me. That's me.
All the time? Let me look at my calendar. Every day.
Exactly.
Every day.
But that's
every day.
And so that, what that does is it puts us in a double bind. Not only does it disable the person from thinking that they're competent in doing X number of things, so they will now just leave it to you in their mind. Your daughter or your partner will just be like, oh yeah, like that, they're going to take care of it. I'm not good at it. And the other thing it does is it starts to further deepen your core belief that only you can do this. And so you start believing that you can't say no, you can't have boundaries, you can't go and take a break, right? Like you start believing all of these things that contribute to being toxically productive, which eventually lead to burnout, not just in the workplace, but even in your relationships.
Yeah. So like this perfectionism ideal, which is the belief that there is only one quote unquote right way to do things, could be contributing to this toxic productivity, as well as this overachieving, which, oh my gosh, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, I feel like my worth is on everything I achieve. This is where I fall into the productivity trap as well. And so that could have an impact as well. So if you're listening right now and you're like, oh my gosh, this is me and Brie are definitely right here with you. And you were with us too, Israa, with all of your personal growth stuff and the story you told about you and your friend in the cafe talking about podcasts. Could you tell us that, what you discovered?
Gosh, yeah. And I was like very intentional about wanting to share my story as well, because I think this is something that everybody struggles with. And it's like a lifelong thing that we decouple and unlearn, especially if you're raised as being like a very high achieving person. And I had kind of slipped into this mindset that everything I do needs to be in service of personal growth. And that's a really big mask that toxic productivity can wear. And it's so innocuous where I wouldn't even allow myself to watch like a rom-com. It wasn't like I wasn't giving myself permission. It was like immediately it was checked out of the box. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm never going to watch this, right? And I wasn't letting myself read fiction novels anymore because that time I had to put towards some sort of personal growth. And even podcasts that can be very entertaining, I was like, no, it has to be educational. I have to learn something. So everything was in service of learning. That's like a passion of mine, but any good thing, when it crosses a line, can become harmful. And so my friend and I were just like, we were just so sad about the fact that there just wasn't enough time to listen to all the podcasts in the world. And I realized that, maybe we don't have to listen to every podcast. I know I'm on a podcast, so I don't know, maybe
it's like, listen to this
talk
podcast.
about this,
But
but
you make the time to not only listen to this podcast, but to be on this podcast. So we know we're up there. We know it. Yeah, we're worth the time.
Yeah. But and I just absolutely. And you know what? I actually want to say something interesting. Like, it's not about worth or not worth. It's about what do you need, right? And I think that's what I want people to build within themselves. Is we are always going to have an influx of content right now that's coming out. And even for my own book, which here I am talking about, literally, like I've said this so many times and I'll say it here too. If you already have a high TBR and you have a bunch of books that you have not read yet, don't pick this one up. Come to it later. If you are not interested in this topic right now, but you're seeing this everywhere because ads are running, genuinely, I think what I want is for people to be way more intentional about where they are putting their time and energy. Question why you want to do this. I really had to sit and do that with myself. And, and then I really had to make a very hard commitment to read nonfiction and watch rom-coms again. And, because there's so much value in that stuff too. Like, why are we devaluing these things that are not productive because they don't have these outcomes, right? It just seems like a boring life. Like, I feel like my life became boring at some
there's
point.
a value in fun.
Yes.
The best people to have on your team and to work with are the ones who bring fun to your environment, not necessarily the ones who know the most. The ones who know the most are kind of like the know-it-alls, and you kind of want to like push them in the corner when it comes to like and I say that because I'm a know-it-all, and I and I'm trying to reduce that and trying to have more fun in my life because of that, because connection is based on fun. And like, what is this life for, as you said, if not to have fun? Something that I do want to bring up is this whole concept about morning routines that I see a lot, that come a lot with moms who think that like, oh, if I just had the right morning routine, I could get more done. I could have a better day. And this is something that you discuss about in your book in terms of like self-care and exercise. And I want to get into that in the morning routine right after this.
Big news! The Burger King Whopper lineup just got bigger. Now featuring the $1 Million Whopper Contest top 3. There's something for street corn stands, bourbon barbecue fans, and fried pickle lovers. You gotta try them. You rule your season today at BK. Have it your way. You rule. Participating U.S. restaurants. Limited time only while supplies last.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/MBO. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
So many moms who come to us here at No Guilt Mom, who are in our balance program, we hear this concept of a morning routine, specifically how it comes to fitting in exercise, eating healthy, and getting stuff done before your kids are up. However, and I say this from my own personal life, the morning routine is just not fun. Like, you see it as all these things that you have to do. And I noticed this too, where I just didn't want to get up and work out. I didn't want to get up and do the things. I wanted to have that time to luxuriate, I call it, and lay in bed. And yet my mind was mind rot as
well,
our
no.
says.
Well, I mean, the kids these days call that bed rotting. To me, it is peaceful semi-meditation.
Yes, but I felt so bad about not wanting to do this. So talk to us a little about like self-care. Like, how could we get over this feeling of feeling bad, just have a little space in our life?
One thing I'll say right at the outset is that a good morning routine is by far the best way to have a balanced day. But a good morning routine looks different for every single person. I think that's the piece we're missing. I think it's really important to have a grounded entry into beginning your day. But what that looks like and what you do in it needs to be something that is true and authentic to you, not like a listicle you read somewhere or an Instagram video you saw, right? And so I think that's the piece where we can bring agency and autonomy back into our life. Those are the places we make decisions to choose what we'll do in the morning. Because there's so much research out there that tells you that meditation is good for you. I know for a fact there are people when they meditate, their anxiety increases because they're just not able to tap into that part of their brain. So forcing that person to meditate in the morning means they're going to start from a place of anxiety. And then they're going to feel bad that it didn't work for them. So they're going to have shame. And obviously, you're going to have a day that's hard emotionally, right? So what I encourage people to do is to really find the thing that works for you. Pragmatically, yes, working out in the morning might be the only time you get to work out. Sure, sometimes you make concessions for, pragmatic logistical things. But maybe if it's really not working for you and you're not at your energetic best to really get in a good workout in the morning, reflect on where else you could work out, even if it's for 30 minutes instead of 60. Later on in the day, when your body cycle is higher, where you can actually put in more energy. I think we have to be very critical of what we're doing in the morning. And so my morning routine, my God, I could never make an Instagram video out of it because it's not aesthetic. It has no vibes, right? But can I tell you how it is a non-negotiable for me? And I know the times where I don't do it, I'm dysregulated. So I wake up with a 20-minute buffer to like the time I'm supposed to be up. That requires me to get ready and everything. So I have an extra 20 minutes. You could even, on busy days, I do it for extra 10 minutes, right? And my morning routine consists of listening to very soothing jazz music while I brush my teeth and get ready. And then I have my coffee and breakfast in silence. That's it. That's my morning routine. And it literally changed my whole life because that 5 to 8 minutes, the 5 to 8 minutes of sitting quietly, enjoying my coffee because I'm a big coffee drinker, eating my yogurt bowl. Sometimes I'll put on like a nature show or like a food show, like the Great British Baking, if I'm feeling like it. But most of the times it's quiet. I'm not on my phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not posting on Instagram. And now when I arrive to my desk, like I'm intentionally arriving. This is my decision. I'm not reacting to my calendar to get there. And it just makes me feel so much more grounded. Like my nervous system is feeling its best because of that. And so I'm not reactive.
I love that.
What you say about like being intentionally there versus being a slave to your calendar, that hits with me because sometimes I feel like I'm that slave to my calendar and I just want to rebel against it and not do anything it tells me to do because that's my personality. So like I feel I'm still looking for that routine for myself.
It takes time.
I walk my dog.
Right? Like I think it takes time to find it because I'm having some realizations that I think I'm going to have to share at the end of this interview with Joanne. But I also think maybe punk isn't the best thing for first thing in the morning when Bree's already fried. I don't know. But
I don't know.
But I do think that it is notable though, too, right? That routine probably adjusts. Like, and that's the other thing too with the productivity, I think sometimes, right? Like we beat ourselves up when one system worked for us at one time. And then now, later in our life, due to circumstances, it could be like how your family is, or like Bree currently going through perimenopause and her whole body has decided that nothing works anymore. Like you have to give yourself that grace and patience, right? To know that the productivity or the part that makes you feel like you're getting things done you're going to have to search for a new way to do that sometime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. It took me like almost like 6 months to really understand that I actually didn't need to do anything in the morning to feel good, because I used to journal and I would definitely work out, and I tried meditation, and I tried like walking to go get my coffee. Like I actually just tried a lot of different things until I landed on this, which is making my coffee at home and like a rotation of 5 things for breakfast, which I love. But that, I think you bring up a really good point, is like our routines have to be flexible and evolving in every season of our life. And that requires you to consistently be in touch with yourself, which just makes you a more aware and intentional.
Yeah. What would be like one piece of advice that people listening to this who realize that they may be stuck in a little bit of toxic productivity, how could they get out of it?
I think what I would ask people to do is to try to see if for the next 4 weeks, you can spend some solo time once a week. It sounds like a big ask on the outset because everybody has like a million things to do. But if you could even take a 10 to 20 minute per week and just no phone, no email, no music, no podcast, nothing, and see if you can spend time on your own. I think that within 4 weeks, we start realizing the pattern our brain takes. We start realizing, oh, what are the thoughts that consistently come up for me? I think if you're feeling like you're stuck, the first thing you have to do is build awareness, because you can't change something you don't know.
Yeah.
And for me, the problem was that I had like a very strong anxiety that is often known as the fear of missing out. So that was leading me to overcommit. But for other people, overcommitment happens because they have a hard time saying no.
Yeah.
Right? They struggle with disappointing people. For other people, it's because they have a very finite definition of success. So the result is the same, which is overcommitting, but it can happen in so many different ways. By being with yourself, you'll start to realize, what are you bringing to your life that might be causing you some distress?
Yeah, that's good. Like I feel like, first of all, taking away from this conversation, I am going to figure out what works for me in the mornings to make me a calm Joanne, and then just be quiet, figure out like what messages I'm telling myself. I feel like I've made a lot of progress through the years, but there's some still little tweaks to be made. So, Israa, what are you looking forward to that's coming up for you?
2 things. One, the book is out in the world, so I'm very excited to see how people react to it, how they feel, if it's helpful. I'm curious because it's been with me for so long. There was a time where I literally was like having an existential crisis, or I was like, is this even like, what is meaning? Like, is this even meaningful? So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see how this impacts people. And then I'm also excited about my book tour, which I'm doing in January, because I'm intentionally taking a break. Yeah, I'm very intentionally deciding to not do anything in the holiday season except just be with my family, because leading up to this, I was in a very toxic productivity season. Like the last...
Yeah, writing a book is insane, and launching a book. So happy book release day.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm excited about those 2 things, is the book coming out and then actually taking it on tour, going to different cities, meeting people, talking to them, all that.
You'll have to let us know when you're in Phoenix.
If you're in Phoenix, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Israa, for coming on, sharing all of this great stuff about toxic productivity. And you listening right now, if you feel like you are stuck in that toxic productivity cycle, Israa's book is called Toxic Productivity: Reclaim Your Time and Emotional Energy in a World That Always Demands More. We have a link for you right there in our show notes. So thank you so much, Israa, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Brie had me like stunned right after we stopped, because she's like, I brought up the lyrics to Toxic and sing. It's fun. And I'm like, it's not fun for me.
Because you know that you're toxic with the taste of the poison paradise. I honestly think that her walkout song to any of her book signings needs to be Toxic.
Yeah.
It needs to be. And now the question is, does it need to be the original Britney version, or have you heard the Metal Rage version?
I have not heard the Metal Rage version.
Oh, girl.
Now, you mentioned during the podcast that you had some realization that you needed to talk about.
Yep, that made me think about that. I was like, okay, so in the interview, she was talking about how she's found like a good morning routine. And I think I could be an earlier person. I just need to find the routine. Because like I used to, way back in the day, be someone who got up at 5 a.m., And I would do yoga in the morning. And I loved those mornings. I love those quiet, relaxing ways to wake up and stretch and feel good. But back to my point, the realization I had was perhaps punk music isn't the best thing for an overly anxious ADHD brain.
Maybe you just need the calming. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think maybe waking up in the morning and asking them to put on like the Ramones, I Want to Be Sedated, might not be my best move.
It's like
it might not be.
It's like the Ramones are working against you at that moment in time.
And it's the Ramones. The Ramones can't work against anybody. But that just might not be their time and their place. They just might need to be skedaddled a little bit.
But you're
jazz in the
you're
morning.
like up trying to get the energy for the day, and the Ramones are just like, I want to be sedated. It was like,
right. Well, it's the 20, 24 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep singing.
Yeah.
This is going to keep happening. But yeah, I think that something slower might actually put me in a less frazzled state of mind, because how was I when we got on for this interview before she joined us? I was frazzled as all get out this morning, was I not?
Yeah, but I mean, you had a very, very busy morning. So it's, it
But a
makes
good
sense.
routine could have probably helped.
Maybe, yeah. Sometimes, like, I think, though, a good routine, like when we say, oh, a good routine, and I shouldn't be doing this, and I can help this, is I'm like, I don't know. I'm pushing against a lot of things that are completely in my control, because I have been one of those people who is like, oh, I could fix that. I could fix that. I could fix that. And I'm realizing, especially with health and especially with, getting older, having like changing bodies, everything, there is some things that are just not in my control. And there are some times where my body is just like, rest, don't do this. And instead I try to like give myself shame and harm for like, because I'm not following my calendar.
I shouldn't be resting.
I shouldn't be resting.
Yeah.
I should be going to work out. All of these shooting on myself. I realized this the other day.
Quit shitting on yourself,
shitting
all
on
right?
myself.
Quit shitting on yourself.
Yesterday, I got a migraine in the afternoon, and I felt it come on, and I got it real fast, and I took my migraine med. But like, as I picked up my daughter from school, we were driving back, she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I have a migraine. And she's like, well, how do you not get migraines? Because I don't want to get migraines. So like, tell me, how do you not get migraines? And I was just like,
you're like, girl, if I only knew.
I'm like, I have no idea. She's like, well, there must be something you could do. And I'm like, my migraine medication? That's pretty much what I could do. But it made
You tell her too that she's got hope. It didn't hit you till later in life.
It didn't. And also, like, my mom didn't have migraine medication to deal with it. So maybe when she starts getting migraines at like 40 years old, it won't even be a thing. Like, they'll have a preventative measure or something for it. I mean, just hope.
Maybe.
But it made me realize that it's such my thinking on some things where I'm like, well, if I just do these certain things, I can prevent things from happening. And it's not the case, which is causing me to calm down a little bit more in my daily life, as you know, because you've tried to talk me out of things that I think I have control over, and I don't.
I at least try to give you that external permission.
Yeah,
that's what I do. As your partner in crime, I try to give the external permission of you're looking like you're telling me that you're in pain or that you're tired or you're sick, and I'm like, you can like take the rest of the afternoon off. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I will say this: it's interesting, that story you just shared about how your daughter immediately went to that too. Well, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very good point, like how I brought up in the interview that I feel like the toxic productivity was the accepted okay for decades in our culture and our society here in the US. And even though I think that we're trying to adjust the needle, and I think we are adjusting the needle somewhat, I think there's still a lot of work to be done to adjust that needle.
Oh, yeah. If you heard a bit of yourself in that toxic productivity like me and Bree did, there are steps now to take. Just start experimenting with things that make you feel good and start noticing that voice that's shooting you to death like our voices do.
I know, man.
Yep. And until next time, remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Owen, self-help author with 19 translations of my books, global keynote speaker, and life coach. My podcast, Make Some Noise, has been serving up self-help in a simple-to-digest way for the last decade. The topics brought in each episode are practical and easy to implement around topics such as working through fears that keep you stuck, different modalities of therapy, managing your negative self-talk, and more. We bring you guest experts, solo episodes, and I even coach listeners on the air around relatable struggles. I also do my best to weave my sense of humor into some heavy topics because, let's face it, life can be pretty hard, and it's so much better when we can have some fun while walking through our challenges. Whether you're seasoned in personal development or just starting out, Make Some Noise podcast will help you become the best version of yourself, the person you're proud of when you look in the mirror and show up in your life. Simply search Make Some Noise with Andrea Owen wherever you listen to your podcasts.